All the night tide. My grandfather began his life selling the fruits of the sea on the docks of Bedovering. Yet even from an early age he knew he was destined for great things. But unlike many people who dream of being rich and powerful, he pulled his finger out and went to work making it happen. Now, he was not always an angel, as I'm sure some of you can attest firsthand. An uneasy murmur of awkward laughter ran through the select crowd. Art let it pass before continuing. But he was a man of his word. And he would move the teeth themselves to make that true.
"I'd burn your stall out if you didn't,"
interrupted his uncle, Dan. The ripple of uneasy laughter returned. Art acknowledged his words with a rueful smile. And while his methods may have started out a little questionably, and he would be the first to admit this, he made sure that those who were loyal to him had a place on the ladder behind him. And so here we are. The legacy that Sem van Wisborg built is this family, and our guild, and while we may not sit on the high table yet, we are close enough that we can clean the cutlery.
"Get on with it,"
muttered his Uncle Dan. Art did not hold his garrulousness against him. He had been very close to the old man, and had been drinking pretty much solidly since the news of his death reached the house. From fishmonger to diplomat, Art continued, getting ready to wrap up. He was, as you know, one of those who negotiated the Steel Fist bounty with the Empire of Katazar, and remained a regular visitor to their shores, both for business and pleasure. At this, he raised his glass to the cowled and veiled figure who stood on the edge of the gathering. The highborn was known to most of those present, but the mourning traditions of the Imperials were not the same as those of Sarkafan. Everyone else was in their finest clothing, bright and rich, as befitted the act of respect they were about to engage in. Whilst there, he viewed a gorgeous tapestry that hung in one of the chapter houses, a piece of art depicting a number of important historical events, the colours of which entranced and delighted him. He spoke of it several times in his letters, and even offered a quite eye-watering sum of money to purchase it. His offer was rebuffed. Thank goodness, or we might not all be standing here today. Laughter again, a little less awkward. Those in the know were aware of just how much Sem had proposed to spend on what Dan called a nice wall rug. Knowing that, I thought there was only one way to honor him and remind us all of how much we owe to his ambition. He nodded, and the curtains fell away from the wall, revealing an absolutely stunning stone fresco. Ships, and the sea, and storms, and a dozen other details, with a lion-headed man front and centre. There were approving gasps, and a scattered round of applause. The sculpture was exquisite, plainly not Sarkafan in style. The artist had used the lines of the marble to remarkable effect, capturing a sense of motion and wonder. Art nodded again, and several of the guests came forward to lay fingers on the piece. His Aunt Yara pressed her cheek against the cold stone, her naga eyes glittering in pleasure.
"Who's that lion-head fellow?"
asked his Uncle Dan, squinting a little drunkenly.
"Is it meant to be an eternal?"
Art shrugged. "I think it's one of their holy figures," he said. "I'm sure my grandfather knew, but all that I know is that it's beautiful, and it was very expensive." Dan nodded approvingly. He continued to stare at the lion man, brow creased as he tried to work out exactly what it was meant to be. Art let the moment linger a little, then tapped one of his rings against his glass to get their attention. "If you'd like to follow me through to the dining room," he said, "it's time to pay our final respects." As the party filed through to the great hall, Art glanced back at the fresco. It was very pretty, and the price made it a perfect way to show his respect and affection for the terrible old man. Then the sweet smells of the feast that was to come called his attention back to the real reason they were all gathered here today, and he closed the door behind him. Overview. Each season, the civil service prepares a summary of the Empire's relationship with the foreign nations, based on communications received from their ambassador, along with any useful intelligence gathered from other sources. While the Senate and other houses of imperial power may respond to these offers, it is important to note that it is the appropriate ambassador the foreign power will expect to hear from, Their communication with the foreign power is the primary element that will determine the tenor of any response. The merchant princes of the Sarkafan Delves, the Baedelar Huisbaas, strive for neutrality. They are enthusiastic about trade with the Empire, but the neutrality is precious to them. They hold it a mark of pride that they will deal with anyone who has goods, services, or money. While they have given up the practice of slavery without regret, they refuse to pick a side between the Liberty Pact and the Freedom Accord. Their primary goal is to ensure the ports of the world remain open to their ships, ideally with free trade agreements that allow their merchants to operate without onerous tariffs. They have recently declared the Pax Sarkafan, a commitment to combat piracy and ensure that independent traders are free to sail the seven seas, regardless of the politics of the great powers. Sarkafan ambassador to the Empire is Baedelar Huisbaas Anneke of the Tower of the Crows. She reports to the beggar landlords of Sarkafan and is known to be a wily and subtle diplomat. No stranger to the murkier waters of espionage and intelligence gathering, she constantly seeks opportunities to expand the influence of the Sarkafan mercantile empire across the known world. She has no particular loyalty to any one faction. Her main concern appears to be the prosperity of the nation as a whole. Pax Sarkafan. Last season, the Sarkafan Delves announced the institution of the Pax Sarkafan, a commitment to keeping the sea lanes open to traders in the face of open warfare between multiple great powers. The Pax is straightforward. While nations have every right to sink each other's ships if they are at war, piracy will not be tolerated. Attempts to force uninvolved nations to stop trading with an enemy will be met with swift retribution from Sarkafan. They will cut off trade ties, encourage their allies to do the same, and send their own battleships and privateers to harass the offending nation. Ambassador Dino has acknowledged the Pax and assured the Baedelar Huisbaas that the Senate will bear it in mind before engaging in future blockades or creating new laws about maritime matters. Baedelar Huisbaas Anneke has thanked the ambassador for their reply and offered reassurances that it will have nothing to fear as long as it continues to respect the right of third-party nations to trade with whomever they wish. One of the first targets of the Pax Sarkafan will be the Grendel, the Salt Lords' Council's open support for indiscriminate piracy in the Bay of Catazai is unacceptable. Baedelar Huisbaas Anneke has instructed the ambassadorial staff in Dovtraig to make it clear to the Salt Lords that if they continue to endanger independent vessels in the bay, the Sarkafan will take action. She is still waiting for a reply, but cautiously expects the Salt Lords to see sense. This won't help Imperial ships, of course. The Grendel and Empire are at war, and Sarkafan has no interest in getting caught between the two, but it will be good news for anyone else whose ships visit Imperial ports. Beorraith. On a somewhat related matter, Baedelar Huisbaas Anneke wishes to inform the Empire that the Sarkafan Delves are engaging in negotiations with the sovereign city-state of Beorraith, with regards to supporting its neutrality and ambitions to become a trading hub on the Bay of Catazai. The finer details of the treaty are still being worked out, but the Delves are looking to secure a trading enclave similar to the enclave in Sardvos, with an eye towards easy access to the Grendel and Imperial goods and services. While the Baedelar Huisbaas is aware of the Grendel aggression in Meiriv, should the Unshackled prove victorious, then the improved prosperity in Beorraith and a more open and accessible set of docks there may well prove to be a significant boost to the fortunes of the territory. The civil service cautioned that this interest in Beorraith may prove to be a two-edged sword. If the Sarkafan treaty with the former Salt Lord Essen comes to fruition, it will be harder for the Empire to move against the nascent city-state without diplomatic repercussions. While it will likely go some way to protecting Beorraith and Sinfjord from the Grendel, it will mean that for either side, control of the territory will require control of 4 of the remaining regions, meaning conflict in the territory will quickly leave neither side in control. Also, while there may be economic benefits for Meiriv, regardless of who has overall control, the benefits to Beorraith and Essen will be significantly greater, and reduce opportunities for imperial investment in the city. It would also make it harder for the Empire to exert diplomatic pressure on Essen and his faction. It's not entirely clear what the Empire can do at this time, but the fact that Baedelar Huisbaas Anneke has let the Empire know before the treaty is finalised show they don't want to risk presenting this as a fait accompli. It might be possible for the ambassador and the imperial consul to influence the outcome, A strongly worded disapproval of Sarkhan involvement in bear wraith might at least see some concessions from the Delves, while threats or firm offers from the consul might in theory persuade Essen to accept limits on Sarkhan investment in the city-state, although obviously the more closely bear wraith aligns with the Empire, the greater the risk that the Grendel will move against it. At worst, the Empire could demand the Sarkhan drop the treaty entirely, though that would come at a significant cost to their relationship with the Delves. Investment in the Brass Coast. The Sarkhan have been asked if they would be interested in investing in the project to restore the Celesti Lighthouse in Feroz. Candidly, Bedela Hausbas Anarchy is concerned that building a lighthouse on the shores of the Brass Coast, while the children of Rex are still a threat to the Empire, is a bold move. Yet those fears are somewhat allayed when it becomes apparent the plan would include fortifying Oran. Given its position, Anarchy inquires as to whether Oran will be the successor to Sirok, a major trade hub in the Western Bay. There is certainly interest in getting in on the ground floor, as it were, but there are also concerns. With hostile and supernaturally strengthened forces in control of both the Khazar Straits and free landing, access by sea to Oran would be challenging indeed, even for the expert mariners of the Delves. Which is not to say that there is not a route to collaboration on this matter. With the De Bruyn family active in the bay, Sarkhan captains are much more inclined to take risks knowing that there is a ready supply of mercenaries available to protect their ships from the murderous acolytes of Hullbreaker. Details of the lighthouse citadel in Oran are intriguing. They have been extensively discussed at Beggar's Feast, and Anarchy has been empowered to make an offer. Providing the Imperial Senate commissions the fortified citadel as presented by the ambassador, the Sarkhan Delves are interested in an investment opportunity. They propose a treaty. They will supply white granite at discount rates. If the Senate is prepared to cede a parcel of land within the citadel, along the docks, in a similar manner to the Alveti estates, the land will be considered Sarkhan soil, allowing their traders may live and work without fear of harassment by the magistrates. In return, they will provide a total of 60 wains of white granite over the year following the commission beginning at a little under 2.5 thrones a wain. If accepted, this would amend the total costs of the fortified lighthouse, reducing the white granite required to 60 wains, but increasing the labour and material costs to 200 thrones. Bedla Hausbas Anarchy is aware that the Imperial Senate may be too busy to consider such arrangements. If the Brass Coast would rather handle the matter directly themselves, then the Sarkhan could arrange that. Of course, the freeborn families can't cede the land for the Enclave, so such a deal wouldn't be anywhere near as attractive, but it would mean the construction would be expedited without wasting the Senate's time. The Sarkhan appear to be unaware that the new lighthouse has not been commissioned. In that case, then the Sarkhan would make up to 15 wains of white granite available for purchase by the Brass Coast. The obvious title for the Sarkhan to liaise with would be the Celesti Lighthouse Keeper, but that title has lapsed following the looting of the lighthouse by Rahab. Since the title won't be reappointed until the new commission is complete, the ambassador suggests that the Sarkhan deal with Bekar I Riqueza I Erigo, the previous holder of the position. The white granite would cost 3 thrones a wain, but Bekar could buy up to 15 wains a season at 3 thrones a wain for 1 year after the Senate commissioned the construction of the new fortification. In either case, as part of the arrangement, the De Bruyn are prepared to help defend the site against attack. They propose to dispatch several of their warships to help the Freeborn protect the construction site from attacks by the Children of Rex, and even the Grendel should they attempt to threaten Sarkhan investment in Feroz. They caution, however, that these vessels will not be sufficient by themselves to protect Oranseri if it is attacked by the Children of Rex. Their navy will easily overcome the Sarkhan defenders if they are fighting alone. However, the De Bruyn could coordinate their efforts with local Corsair families, create a new defensive venture and voyage, protect the Celesti Lighthouse, which would allow freeborn military units and fleets to come together against any attackers. Provided there were enough of them, they could give the Children of Rex a bloody nose. Someone might have to arrange payment for the freeborn defenders, but presumably the Thomiro could arrange that. Regarding new Imperial laws. Last season, the Imperial Senate enacted a change to the law to explicitly outlaw the disbursement, trade, sale, and consumption of the flesh of the sapient denizens of the mortal realm. As part of their duties, Ambassador Dino has informed the Sarkofan Delves, rightly identifying that they would be impacted by the decision. Funerary rites in the Delves include a ritualized cannibalistic feast, during which the family and friends of the deceased take part in a ceremonial meal that involves consuming the cadaver, cooked and prepared by specialized chefs. There is also a popular drug found only in Sarkofan, called Visivlis, that is apparently made from specially treated flesh taken from corpses. Neither practice entirely matches the traditional view of cannibalism as a practice rooted in desperation or absolute wickedness, but it is nonetheless clear that the new law criminalizes both the traditional Sarkofan funeral and the consumption or trade of Visivlis. Bedela Hoisbas Annika is, however, broadly unconcerned. Few Sarkofan would host a funerary feast in the Empire anyway, and if they did, they would almost certainly do so in the confines of the Alveti estates, where imperial law is not a consideration. There might be considerations relating to the harassment of any imperial citizen invited by a Sarkofan friend or business partner to take part in their funerary rites, but the ambassador of the Delves suggests that such incidents become a source of concern only when they arise. Hopefully even the overzealous imperial magistrates will not feel the need to punish grieving folk returning from a funeral. The trade in Visivlis might be impacted, but frankly it is rarely sold to imperial citizens. There is a general squeamishness about consuming something made from the meat of sapient creatures, and the drug is a premium product even in Sarkofan. Even there, uses Bedla Puspak Annika, it is not uncommon for folk to eschew the drug due to its source. If any Visivlis is being sold in the Empire, it will be with the recommendation that the purchaser consume it before leaving the Sarkofan enclave, and if imperial citizens choose to do otherwise, it is not a concern for the merchants of the Delves. At the end of the day, any perception of the Delves as a lawless haven of enthusiastic cannibals is little more than a smear campaign by those they have bested in trade. The idea that a citizen of the Delves might casually eat a stranger is very far from the truth indeed. It is no more likely that a Sarkofan will eat someone they do not know than it is that the average citizen of the League would do so. If she has a criticism of all this, it is a personal one. In her opinion, this kind of law is arguably more evidence that the Senate does not trust its citizens. Murder is already illegal after all, regardless of whether the intent is to eat your victim. Presumably, it is still illegal to steal from the dead, digging them up to consume them. Specifically calling out consumption of dead flesh feels like overstretch to the notoriously liberal Sarkofan. Indeed, recent efforts to control what imperial citizens can do, especially with regards to how they can entertain themselves, are a little disappointing to the seat of the crow. Money for art's sake. And on the subject of funerary traditions, during the spring equinox, Cinna van Eiger, an art dealer associated with a small sect of the Sarkofan religion called De Verzamelaars van Beeldesnissen, but usually referred to as the Collectors, spoke with the Council of Benefactors of Highguard. The Collectors hold beliefs that are considered a little peculiar even by Sarkofan standards. Among them is a teaching that valuable objects depicting a deceased person's face hold immense value for buying a place in the Houses of Silence. It seems that imperial iconography and funerary monuments are now extremely fashionable among collectors, and even gaining some popularity with Sarkofan folk of more traditional beliefs. Senna signed a year-long exclusive deal for Highguard white granite and stone masonry with the benefactors. This has seen all highborn businesses and mines receive an extra 18 rings production per season. He apparently hopes that this trade might build the reputation of Highguard stonemasons internationally, with an eye towards a better deal to be brokered in 388 YE. This arrangement has proved controversial. Priest of the Way from the Delves named Misha von der Libel, a dedicant of prosperity, has condemned the collector's fascination with highborn art and the iconography of the Way. The sect has never shown interest in the Way itself, only the beauty of its imagery and its fashionable nature. Misha warns that Senna's deal devalues the Way, and makes it easy for critics to denigrate its followers as valuing wealth over virtue. Misha's pronouncements have been supported by concerned pilgrims of the Way in Sarkofan, and even from some worried highborn citizens. The Sumar Priester have also pointed out that this trade represents, in their opinion, a failure of pride, trading the beauty and splendor of the way for coin. The Highborn Assembly discussed the matter during the summer solstice. While Dagon of the Shattered Tower raised a mandate condemning the practice, the Highborn Assembly chose not to enact it. Instead, they supported the words of Kezia, the Bishop of the Navigators themselves. They called on artists of Highguard to embrace the moment of cultural exchange, urging that the art of the way might inspire true virtue in Sarkafan. Unfortunately, it appears that those critical of the move in the Delves and Highguard are correct. The sale of highborn art is not inspiring anyone in Sarkafan to embrace the way or the true virtues. Quite the contrary. Prestige of both the Bishop of the Navigators and the cathedral itself have experienced some of the backlash arising from this decision. The Merchant Ministry and the Low Ministry have permanently lost their top level of production, as followers of the way in Sarkafan react poorly to the decision of the Highborn. Many of those who might otherwise have been drawn to the Cathedral of the Navigators instead look to the Sumar Cathedral in the Sarkafan Delves for inspiration. The Priesthood have not been slow to embrace them, and continue to preach openly that the Highborn are devaluing their shared faith by treating virtue as a commodity to be bought and sold. However unfair these words may appear, the loss of prestige for the cathedral and the bishop will continue, causing the Low Ministry to disappear entirely after the winter solstice, and the Merchant Ministry to be reduced to a single level. Ambassador Dino has ensured that there will be no diplomatic fallout whatever happens, reassuring their opposite number that any problems that arise will be between the Empire and the Collectors sect specifically. For her part, Bedla Hoisbach Annika appears broadly untroubled. As long as there is no disruption in the Beutelandswijk involving the followers of the Way, either with each other or with the Collectors, the Bedla Hoisbachs have no concerns. The Sarkafan are not an especially religious people, after all, and as such have minimal interests in the doings of priests, except as they impact profitable trade ventures. However, she absolutely appreciates the ambassador's reminder to the Synod that the Collectors are not representative of the Sarkafan people as a whole, regardless of faith, and that any responses to them should remain cognizant of that reality. For their part, report the staff of the Sarkafan embassy, the Collectors are doing very well out of this deal. While it is not proving especially useful at spreading their particular take on the Sarkafan faith, they are doing business hand over fist, and the sales of highborn art are doing very well. Not just in a funerary context either. A nicely sculpted statue of an exemplar or fresco depicting the seven virtues has become something of a status symbol among the more artistically inclined Sarkafan families. Yet there is little doubt that they are appreciated overwhelmingly as works of art, rather than as anything with a strong spiritual dimension. A silent Mons. De Verzamelaars van Beeltesnees are not the only sect of Sarkafan priesthood with an interest in the Empire. A year ago, representatives of the Community of Silence, the Gemeenschap van Stilte, announced their interest in establishing a House of Silence in the Alveti Estates enclave in Sarvos. Unlike the Collectors, who they apparently hold in very low esteem, the Community of Silence is a moderately influential sect that specializes in supporting the spiritual, and in many cases, medical, needs of Sarkafan enclaves in other nations. Poortwachter Leonard Farber is the spokesperson for the gathering at the estates, and secured a portion of land upon which his sect intended to establish a silent Mons, a religious site dedicated to the Sarkafan faith. The work ran into some problems sourcing the white granite they needed to complete the construction, but it appears that despite these setbacks, the Mons is now complete. Memento Mori. One area they have been successful is in securing an artist to help give the Mons an appropriate atmosphere. Traditionally, the Community of Silence makes a point of employing local sculptors, painters, and glassmiths when building their temples and shrines. Last winter, Poortwachter Farber declared that they had been offered the services of a renowned Dornish artist from Astolat, whose services they intend to retain until the construction of the Mons was complete. That work, despite delays caused by the need to import most of the material needed to build the structure, is now complete, and Lennart looks forward to seeing what the artist will create. Knowing that artists of such renown obviously have many calls on their time, Poortwachter has dispatched a missive confirming the agreement and offering them an opportunity to remain anonymous if they wish. at least until the obvious genius of their art gives away their identity, of course. Blasphemy and heresy. Obviously, the presence of an actual temple of a foreign religion in Sarvos has been a matter for some concern, for all that the land where it is built is equally technically part of the Sarkvan Delves. The manse allows an unparalleled opportunity for the Poortwachter and their community to proselytize the Sarkvan religion to those visiting the Helveti enclave. The League Assembly has provided some guidance to citizens of the City of Masks, wholeheartedly supporting a statement of principle raised by Paulus Adelar van Holberg. It urges the people of the League to leave them to their ways, and thus avoid falling under their sway. It exhorts citizens to polite and civil disinterest. Given the General Assembly's stance on false virtues, heresy, and blasphemy, this statement makes a great deal of sense to many of the bishops of the League. Weighed against that, the people of Sarvos would not be themselves if there wasn't at least a little interest in seeing what all the fuss is about, secure in the knowledge that their faith in the way will shield them from any devilish influence that Poortwachter Lennart may bring to bear. If the League wants to ensure that their people take this matter seriously, a mandate has been proposed to directly dissuade folk from having anything to do with the Silent Manse and its priesthood. Be alert to all dangers, within and without. The Silent Manse in the Sarkvan enclave is a spiritual threat to the well-being of all. The only way to avoid blasphemy and heresy is to have nothing to do with this profane temple. We send a priest with 25 doses of Liao to urge all imperial citizens planning to visit the estates to express only polite and civil disinterest in their unvirtuous religion. Synod Mandate, League National Assembly. If this mandate is enacted, it will ensure that interest in the Silent Manse and the teachings of the Community of Silence remains limited in the League. It will also mean that citizens of other nations who might consider visiting the Silent Manse will be dissuaded from doing so by the bishops of Sarvos. This won't affect the Community of Silence particularly. Their focus is very much on serving the needs of the Sarkvan citizens and visitors to the enclave, rather than proselytizing explicitly. It will ensure that their beliefs do not spread outside the enclave, and that whatever blasphemous or heretical beliefs they might hold do not corrupt imperial citizens. It will, however, mean that there is no opportunity for cordial relations between followers of the Way and the Community of Silence. This means that opportunities to learn more about their beliefs, or their knowledge of ghosts and the like, will be lost. It is a price, but not an especially steep one, given that the alternative risks seeing these unwholesome beliefs about the nature of death and the labyrinth spread within the Empire. Obviously, an alternative mandate might be offered by the League Assembly, but it is worth noting that it is not possible to propose a mandate that increases interest in the faith of the Delves without an entirely new statement of principle. An alternative mandate can change the wording, but cannot reverse the entire thrust of the statement that inspired it. Under the waves. According to the Imperial Ambassador, the new Minister for Historical Research, Wat Lambrook, intends to take advantage of the offer made last season to explore Sarkvan understanding of Eternals and similar powers related to the sea. As mentioned, there will be a cost of 10 thrones to the Imperial Senate, who maintain the Department of Historical Research, and the work will take 6 months to complete. The chosen researcher will not be available until they complete the work, but it would count as only a single commission of historical research. There is some interest among the Zielweaver covens to meet a delegation from the Empire and pool their respective knowledge on the matter of supernatural powers of the sea. Annika Riley suggests that part of this enthusiasm has no doubt been inspired by the suggestion that the researchers will bring with them a supply of march of booze provided by the minister, jackals and bailerats. Last season, the Sarkvan ambassador asked her opposite number to provide an assessment of what goods most interest imperial traders visiting the Delves. She identified 8 discrete areas of trade, and requested that the ambassador rank them in order of interest. Annika thanks Ambassador Dino for their prompt response, and indicates that the result is very interesting indeed. She's had a report prepared and circulated among the interested parties in the city, with an eye to perhaps tailoring the opportunities available to the imperial captains visiting the ports and markets of the Delves more effectively. More Ascrida. If imperial traders are interested in purchasing large amounts of herbs, incidentally, then Baedler Huisbaas Anneke draws attention to the opportunities presented by swampy Moeraskrede. These docks, which lie along the coast west of the dells themselves, represent the ideal location for merchants to purchase herbs and potions, especially elixirs of a medicinal nature. Access to the port was offered once before, as part of an agreement that secured Sarkofan merchants the right to free trade with the Empire. In the end, the Senate preferred the luxuries of Betovering, but Moeraskrede has not gone away in the meantime. A faction led by the House of the Boiderrat sees a clear opportunity for profit here, and has put forward a proposal that the Empire may consider. A number of Sarkofan herbalists and covens of mercantile magicians are interested in two new rituals, Madin's Gift and Gardener's Wheel, which have apparently been mentioned by something or someone called Vrolijke Zwartedrak. For all their economic power, the Delves do not have anything that rivals the magical scholarship of the Empire, or even the Commonwealth or the Sumer Republic. The interests of those magicians who are in a position to codify new magics are generally focused directly on money, which means ships as often as not. These two rituals represent a potentially very valuable commodity to the Sarkofan primarily due to the immediacy of their effect, something that makes them much more valuable than traditional enchantments on a herb garden. If the Imperial Conclave is prepared to uphold declarations of dissemination for these two rituals, granting them to the House of the Boiderrat, then in return, the House will arrange access to Moeraskrede for Imperial fleet captains. At the moment, this would allow a standard fleet to acquire 6 doses of Marrowwort, 5 doses of Cerulean Mazarine, and 2 random potions of a medicinal nature. These will be drawn primarily from the apothecary potions familiar to Imperial apothecaries, but fleets with significant levels of upgrade may receive something a little spicier. Jakkalsmark. Somewhat to his surprise, there has been a swift response from the House of the Jackal. The Jackal are masters of the jewel trade in the Delves, and their various families have unparalleled expertise in acquiring, evaluating, and securing markets for precious materials and ornaments. One of their leading lights, Annabel de Rode, has seized a potentially lucrative opportunity on learning that top of the list of things Imperial traders are interested in are luxury goods and substances of use to ritual magicians, especially mana crystals. The Jakkalsmarkt is part of Betovering, and the House of the Jackal already benefits from Imperial captains eager to do business there. Following a frankly inspiring flurry of activity, the House has secured significant shipments of valuable magical goods at short notice, which they intend to offer to Imperial fleet captains. They're not asking for anything in return. The captains will pay for their goods like any other. Yet, regretfully, they can only offer these amazing deals for a single season. Following the autumn equinox, however, any Imperial fleet captain will be able to select the Jakkalsmarkt as a trading option. A standard fleet that takes advantage of this opportunity will secure 2 random pawns of Viz, chosen from golden apples, warm ashes, and prismatic ink, Triumph Viz in the parlance of some Irizen traders. They will also receive 3 ingots of Tempest Jade and a smattering of valuable goods, equivalent to 30 rings. More prosperous fleets that have been significantly upgraded or enchanted, will also receive a random piece of star jewellery. These are hard to get hold of magic items, talismans that empower a magician versed in spellcasting to perform a specific spell many more times each day, provided they already know it. Baedler Huisbaas Anneke confides in the ambassador that while Annabel de Rode claims the Jakkalsmarkt will only cater to Imperial captains for a single season following the autumn equinox, it is her opinion that this is simply salespersonship. If the profit is there, the Jackals will follow it until such time as the profit goes away, at which point they will drop it like a hot stone. To put it another way, if lots of Imperial captains are keen to buy from the Jakkalsmarkt, then it would likely remain open as long as the demand is there. Obviously, a good deal like this comes with a catch, however. Annabel de Rode is a former Sarkofan emissary to the Principalities of Yarm, and her family maintains good relations with the traders of that nation. She has leveraged these times In order to acquire so much viz on short notice and the star jewellery she is offering exclusively made by Yarmish artisans, the secrets of which they jealously guard. There is currently an imperial embargo on trade with the principalities, meaning that Yarmish merchants are not welcome at imperial ports. While technically merchants visiting the Yakolsmarkt are dealing with the Sarkofan merchants, and not with the principalities directly, fact remains that a portion of any profits raised here will go straight into the pockets of the Yarmish. While it is a drop in the ocean compared to the costs of running a war, it will benefit that nation in a way that, in theory, might prove a bone of contention with the Commonwealth in particular, and perhaps even the Sumar Republic, as signatories of the Liberty Pact, which outlaws trade with Yarm. There is a reason that in the Delves to call someone a Yakul, as a term of endearment, is to call them a cheeky fucker with a smile on one's face. It remains to be seen whether that smile is contagious, or not. Annabelle de Rode and her faction of the Jackal are not asking for anything. The Yakolsmarkt is open regardless. However, if they wish, the Imperial Senate could make it illegal for Imperial captains to visit the port of Betovering while the market is open. This would prevent anyone visiting the market and acquiring explicitly Yarmish goods, but it would also come at the cost of preventing access to the lucrative luxuries of that wealthy port. Simply criminalizing access to the Yakolsmarkt would not be sufficient. Once a captain docks at Betovering, there is no way for anyone to know what they are doing, where they are going, or what they are buying. Another possibility would be for the Imperial Conclave to interdict star jewellery. While these talismans are not common in the Empire, their basic properties are somewhat known by magicians of the League and Urizen, who have had reason in the past to trade with Yarmish artisans. Unfortunately, it would not be possible to interdict only those talismans that originate in Yarm. If such an interdiction is enacted, then any talisman that follows the same pattern will also be interdicted. That is, any talisman that allows a magician to cast a spell they know additional times a day. The Senate could make possession and trade of Yarmish star jewels illegal, then the onus would be on the magistrates to identify whether such an item originated with a Yarmish artisan, which creates headaches of its own in achieving a conviction. Apothecary allies. The Sarkofan Delves are masters of the arts of the herbalist, physic, and especially the apothecary. Among some of the most enthusiastic merchants to invest in the Empire in recent times came from the Delves, specifically the wealthy and influential Goudeken. This guild is at the forefront of the trade in herbs and medicinal products of all kinds, and so it is perhaps no surprise that they have shown excited interest in the newly created Imperial Sodality of the Apothecaries Guild. The leaders of the guild requested that the speaker for the guild, Esme y Estrico y Erigo, make contact with them to discuss their shared interests. It seems that the speaker has made a very positive impression on the Sodality's opposite numbers in the Sarkofan Delves. They are especially keen on the belief that our expertise should be valued and fairly compensated, unsurprisingly. They are confident that they can do business together, and thus have two initial proposals. Magazijn. There are two major points of contact for the Goudekenne in the Empire at the moment. Two Goudekenne Magazijn warehouses. The first was built at Crown's Quay in Necropolis and is overseen by the Goudekenne Trademaster. The second in Mead in the territory of Mitwold, and overseen by the Master of Root and Stem. The position of Goudekenne Trademaster is auctioned at the spring equinox each year, and as a marcher position, Master of Root and Stem is appointed by tally of the votes during the autumn equinox. The Goudekenne proposed changing this arrangement and asked the Imperial Senate to agree the changes. They would like to see both titles appointed by the Apothecaries Guild. Bedela Huisbaas Anneke has confirmed that the Delves are broadly in favour of this, and that the changes could be presented as a treaty by Ambassador Dino. This change won't affect any of the positions that benefit from the existence of the Goudekenne Magazijn. They would continue to receive their benefits, but it would improve confidence from the Goudekenne merchants dealing with the Empire even further. The High Herbalist of Sibella and the Master of the Clearinghouse would continue to receive their full benefits. Goudekenne themselves would foot the bill to expand their operating in the Western Empire to match those in the East. providing the Master of Root and Stem with additional ability to purchase random herbs identically to that of the Crowderkenna Trademaster. For their part, the Crowderkenna Trademaster would gain the ability to buy true vervain and marrowwort, herbs vital to the medicinal arts. The civil service note that in amending the titles, the Imperial Senate could choose to further amend the Master of Root and Stem to make it an imperial position that could be held by any citizen. There is no requirement to do so, however. An imperial sodality can appoint a national position. In this case, all potential candidates would need to be marchers, but everyone in the sodality would have a say in who held the title. Herbal Law. The Crowderkenna are understandably jealous of their herbal arts. They are the basis of their prosperity and influence, after all. For the most part, they make use of the same potions their imperial counterparts do, but it cannot be denied that they know how to brew some things the Empire's apothecaries do not. It seems they are well aware of the Thornsong House and are interested to learn more about its research, but also painfully aware that it is currently out of action due to the invasion of the Druge and the expanding Belorn. There is one set of potions they know the Empire knows that they do not know, and that they are very interested in gaining access to: the Unshackled Gift. A few years ago, there were some discussions with the then ambassador about acquiring these potions, fronted by a consortium of Sarkafan herbalists. The most recent offer, according to Baedlar Hausbach Annika, was that Sarkafan apothecaries would be prepared to pay 175 thrones for the recipe, provided that it was an exclusive deal. That is, one in which both parties sign contracts guaranteeing that the knowledge will not be shared with residents of any other nation. The Delves have magicians who can arrange for such contracts to be lodged with the brass magistrates of the Autumn Realm, to ensure that both parties face punitive penalties for breaking the contract. The assumption was that having a duopoly on the recipe would allow the merchants of the Delves to recoup the large investment in less than a decade by selling the potions all over the world. Without a convincing contract of exclusivity, potions would be worth only a fraction of their price. Without such an agreement, the Empire could sell the recipe to the Sarkafan, and then sell it to every other nation as well, thus ensuring that the Delves were left with potions that nobody would pay a premium to buy. They were prepared to pay 15 thrones for non-exclusive access to the recipe. The discussions came to nothing, unfortunately, or perhaps fortunately, because it allows the Crowderkenna the opportunity to acquire this lore for their guild rather than sharing it with the rest of the Delves. As such, the Crowderkenna have a proposal of their own for the Apothecaries Guild. If the sodality will commit to trade the recipes to them and agree to an exclusive contract, they will provide the sodality with 2 recipes of their own, as long as that exclusivity were maintained for at least the next 5 years. After that, they would be prepared to negotiate further to remain exclusivity. Brass magistrates would oversee the agreement, ensuring neither side sold the recipes further afield. Obviously, both the Empire's apothecaries and Crowderkenna would be able to profit from selling the goods made with the recipes. The money would be paid directly to the Speaker of the Apothecaries Guild, who could do with it as they wished. In exchange, the Crowderkenna are prepared to share 2 of their own potions with the Apothecaries Guild. They would provide the guild with a herb detailing the 2 potions, and the guild could keep the knowledge to their members or put them into imperial law. Either would be fine provided they were not shared with non-imperial magicians, while the Crowderkenna enjoy their own exclusivity. Potions they intend to offer are both built using the principles of the Master Medical, a salve that ameliorates ruined limbs and suppresses the pain of major injuries in a similar fashion to which the Maledict's Mendicant removes both poisons and curses, and a more potent version of the Elixir Vitae the Empire is familiar with restores an injured warrior to full strength after a short period of inaction. However, there's a niggle with all this. The Apothecaries Guild do not have the legal power to do this. While the Senate has confirmed that the power and authority to disseminate knowledge of potions across the Empire lies with the sodality, they do not have the legal ability to disseminate a herbal from imperial law. Their manifesto indicates that they are responsible for the dissemination of ingredients, potions, and antidotes, and that they represent and support the economic, political, and magical interests of apothecaries and herbalists within the Empire. The Senate has approved the Apothecary Guild Manifesto, but has not formally given them these abilities. One way to resolve this contradiction would be to give the Apothecary Guild the power to disseminate herbs from imperial law. In the same way that the Conclave can use the Declaration of Dissemination, create a ritual text that can then be traded. The other would be to further amend the manifesto of the Apothecaries Guild to water down their remit. Either would require a constitutional vote. Further communication. Regardless of what happens in the short term, as mentioned, the Kruiderkenner are keen to further their relationship with the Imperial Apothecaries Guild. As such, they propose that the speaker for the guild should feel free to send a winged messenger directly to one of their council, Engel van Luther, who is empowered to communicate with the guild on behalf of the Kruiderkenner. They regretfully point out, however, that Engel van Luther is a busy person, and will have little time to reply to random correspondence. As such, he will only reply to messages from the speaker, the Kruiderkenner Trade Master, and the Master of Root and Stem. The latter two are expected to oversee the trade of herbs between the Sarkofan Guild and the Empire after all. Anyone else is cordially invited to do their business via the ambassador to the Sarkofan Delves. Blooming farmers. The fields of Hanmark are a sea of pinks and purples as summer fades to autumn. Among flowers with petals like butterfly wings, honey pickers continue to spot the distinctive spiral bloom of the mysterious Dreikortbloem. The Kraft brothers, self-professed Sarkofan specialists in both wheeling and dealing, say the Wiesesmack, brewed with the harvest, is selling well. But they have a particular interest in the strange spiral flowers growing among the yields of Lindebloom. Florian Kraft has made the long journey from the Delves to investigate the phenomenon more closely, and wishes to speak to Hanmark farmers about their experiences with the plant and any potentially valuable properties. Florian aims to arrive at the Tree of Names in the Wintermark camp at 11:45 on the Sunday of the autumn equinox. But the Kraft brothers' enterprise has also attracted other interest. A past season, renowned vintner Renate Zuredrijver has experimented with the potential to use Dreikortbloem rather than Lindebloem to produce Wiesesmack, and how this might affect the narcotic. His experiments concluded, he wishes to speak to farmers about the results at a time to be confirmed. Goldleaf gardeners. The Bloodhoundtuiniers, perhaps better known as the Goldleaf Gardeners, have been investigating the Sarkofan enclave in Sarvos for a year or so. Early attempts to arrange a deal with the Chamber of Commerce of the city to sell their narcotics proved unappealing. Rather than admit defeat, however, the enthusiastic Arve Beekhoff offered the services of the herbalists more widely. It's not clear if anyone actually took up the offer. The fact remains that the Bloodhoundtuiniers have maintained their presence at the Alveti estates. Arve himself has apparently returned to the Delves, but the gardeners are apparently doing reasonable business with visitors to the estates interested in experiencing the delights they offer. He has left his nephew, Luca Beekhoff, behind to oversee the gardener's business in the Empire. The news is that a winged messenger might be dispatched to Luca, but that the Bloodhoundtuiniers will only answer if the missive relates directly to their business, and that they are not currently looking to sell anything outside of the enclave. Out of character note. Missives can no longer be sent to Arve Beekhoff. Missives sent to Luca Beekhoff will only receive a response if they specifically relate to business matters, and the guild is not selling drugs to private citizens at this time.